scary as it was for me, I realized that it was actually God was releasing this responsibility that had been a burden to me my whole life. He was saying, now this is something I really want to have you guys get, is that he was telling me, I need you to be a daughter. I didn't know what that looked like because I had always been a parent to my parents. And I just remember him saying, like, I want you to be a daughter. Like, what would it look like to just walk in and be able to visit your parent without having a job?
Welcome to the Secure in God's Embrace podcast, where we help Christian women break the power of other people's opinions and find their significance and security in God. Hi, I'm Cheryl Lutz, your host, author, speaker, certified biblical counselor, and recovering people pleaser. We're glad you're here and will enjoy these inspirational interviews from women just like you who found freedom. My friend, do you ever wrestle with relinquishing the burden of control, the need to be the responsible one that has to take care of everything? Or do you really wrestle with asking for help, or not only asking, but allowing others to help you when you have a need? Today on the podcast, we are looking at this whole subject of something that a lot of us really wrestle with. And we're going to look at Exodus chapter 18 and Moses and how he didn't know how to ask for help. And it seemed as you're reading the scripture, he didn't really even realize he knew that he needed it. And we read that he was bearing sole responsibility as the judge of the Israelites and meeting with people daily. It said from morning till night. And so this man clearly did not know how to delegate or ask for help. And so we're going to look at that. And I'm also really excited to introduce our special guest, my dear friend, Phylis Mantelli. I first met Phylis at the Christian Communicators Conference in 2020, and there was a group of us who hung in there and made it to an in-person conference in 2020, and it was just really special, and our hearts were just really knit together. And Phylis and I have had some fun, crazy adventures since then, like twice now, cramming ourselves and lots of luggage into a car that wouldn't hold us all.
Very small car.
Yes, twice now we've done that together. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I can't wait for you to just learn more about her. Phylis grew up, it was a hard childhood. Her book, Unmothered, she'll tell you about a mother who couldn't seem to love her or knew how. And her mother with narcissistic tendencies and alcoholism, a burden of responsibility was placed on Phylis from a very young age to be the adult in the room, and just a lot of pressure for a child throughout her growing up years. And so can't wait for you to hear more about that and all the healing work that she's done and the ministry she has helping others. Let me read you her bio. It says, Phylis Mantelli is the author of the book Unmothered, Life with a Mom Who Couldn't Love Me. She's an inspirational speaker at churches, retreats, conventions, Celebrate recovery groups, and Rotary groups. She's currently writing her second book of lessons on how to break generational dysfunction. She is a graduate of the Christian Communicators Conference and is a certified linked personality coach and certified story work trauma coach with Freedom Movement. She loves helping and coaching women to reach their full God-given potential despite their trauma-filled past. Welcome, Phylis.
Thank you. Whew, quite a bio there.
You're like, is she talking about me? Yeah.
Was that me?
Just what God has done in your life, right?
Oh my gosh. Seems
even
like
shocks you.
Yeah. Sounds like a whole nother person.
Yeah. Well, Phylis, can you share with us just the story you shared in my book, Securely Held, Finding Significance and Security in the Shelter of God's Embrace? But you shared some in a chapter in the book, and can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of writing about control, which we will talk about Moses and the control there. And it's such an interesting story. And also, I love how we take stories from the Bible and then it's like, oh, I'm kind of like that too. So I tell this story of, being the child of someone who grew up with two dysfunctional parents, but really the relationship between a mother and daughter is so important, and not having that, I became the mom of the family kind of in all realms, which was not my job to hold, but I took that on. And my story is about my father who was getting older, and he will be 98 in November, and never expected him to live this long. But as I did with my mother, I took care of my mom until she passed from dementia in 2007. I automatically just thought, out of all the kids, so I have a half sister, but my brother and I have the same mom and dad. My siblings would always bow out when things got hard. And so again, it just like the control came to me, like, I'll take care of it. I'll save the family. I'll be the healthy one. And it was such an unhealthy place to be, because I didn't realize that I could set healthy boundaries. And so I took care of my dad when he started to get older. I was taking care of his finances, everything, and the day to day. And then my father ended up getting sick, but his prostate started getting very large. Well, he didn't want to show his daughter that. And so he actually showed my brother one day when he came to visit, and my brother took him to the hospital. And at the time, this is in 2021, they only allowed one person in the room. And so I couldn't go up and help. And so my brother inadvertently became kind of the caregiver for my dad. And as he brought him back home after they took care of all of these things, and they found out my dad had AFib, and so we saw that the decline was starting to happen, my brother actually approached me and said he wanted to help and take care of my father. And instead of being grateful, because we grew up in this dysfunctional environment and I was still learning the maneuvers of all of that, I got very scared to give away that power. And so I could only think of like, well, I'm the one that cooks and cleans and does all of these things for him, and I do it perfectly. And someone else doing it is not going to be the same. And so it put a great fear in me. And it was in the first time I remember being in the kitchen when my brother was having this conversation with me. And I remember hearing God gently saying, let go of control. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And I thought, yeah, because honestly, where my life was at that time, my oldest daughter had just given birth to her second child. She lived 6 hours away in Southern California, and we wanted to be with our grandkids more, but I was tied up here with this father that I was taking care of on the daily. So, when you look at the bigger picture of it, it's like, it was actually a gift to be able to have my brother step in for the first time and say, I think I can take care of some of this family part now too. And as I've shared with you before, my brother and I don't have a close relationship for several reasons. And so it has always been a struggle to even have a conversation with him. So I was shocked that he came and was actually offering this help. And so, as scary as it was for me, I realized that it was actually God was releasing this responsibility that had been a burden to me my whole life. He was saying, now this is something I really want to have you guys get, is that he was telling me, I need you to be a daughter. I didn't know what that looked like, because I had always been a parent to my parents. And I just remember him saying, like, I want you to be a daughter. Like, what would it look like to just walk in and be able to visit your parent without having a job? So yeah, that chapter in Moses was so important, because relinquishing that whole control was something that was so important. And I will say, honestly, is the hardest thing. It's also painful. So it's twofold.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't think about the painful aspect of releasing the control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's oh, before we go and read about Moses in Exodus 18, can you unpack that a little bit?
The story of it.
Yeah, or the painfulness of
Yeah. Well,
relinquishing control.
yeah. So when you have control, there's almost an ego tied to it, I want to say, is that,
Mm.
I took great pride in making the perfect meal, like washing his clothes a certain way,
Mhm.
making sure his house looked good. My husband and I actually, my dad lives in a mobile home park, and his mobile home was falling apart. It was a mobile home his own brother had. So it was probably over 50 years old,
Wow.
literally had no more carpet left on it. It was a heap pile. And so one day my husband said, we need to, build your dad a new mobile home. Cause
Mm.
we were like, we don't know how much longer he'll live. And if he's alive another 10 years, this mobile home's not gonna make it. We built this beautiful, we found this guy, designed this mobile home for my dad, little 2-bedroom thing, but it was new, it was beautiful. So I took great pride in how,
Mm.
we could take care of him in such a beautiful way. But one of the things is when you let go of the control is watching someone else do something that you have done, that you've had great pride in taking care of so well, and it's not the same.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. And it's a
Wow.
struggle. So that is
Mm.
painful when I'm like, he didn't wash his clothes the same way. I don't like
Mm.
the way, like, he hasn't dusted, like this hasn't
Mm.
happened. It's going to look different. And so I had to keep telling myself, it's different. It's not the way I would do it, but
Mhm.
he's okay. He's still
Mm.
getting the care he
Mm.
needs. He's
Yeah.
not being abused. Like
Yeah.
it's just different. And so stepping aside from our ego pride of like, I'm the only one that can do this, which was the role that was taped on me. It was like,
Yes.
you have to be the savior of the family, but there's an ego pride attached to that. And so you have to let go of that and say, there are other people within this family that can help,
Mm.
that will look different, and it's okay.
Yes. So appreciate the way you unpack that for us, because that's a side people don't always realize,
Yeah,
that there's going to be pain. Yes, there's freedom and there's release and there's joy, but there's
right.
pain and how
Yeah.
hard it actually is. And so, and would you say, I know how much work you've done to get to where you are, the healing process, and we'll talk about that some, but that it was almost an attack on your identity, because your identity that your family put
Yes.
on you, this is who you are. And so letting go of that, it's almost like it started maybe to mess with your identity.
Oh, 100%, because I
Yeah.
don't know what it's like to be a daughter.
Right.
What does that look like? Like, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like always the strong little girl, middle child, taking care of everybody and
Yeah.
peacemaker and
Yeah.
putting things in place, and all the puzzle pieces had to fit,
Hmm.
even though they never did. And so
Right.
it's like, how do you become a like, what does a daughter do? I don't even know what that looks like. And so, yeah, so having to take a step back, and the guilt of
Mm.
like, I can just go visit. So I would bring my husband with me for backup, or my younger daughter. I'm like, can you go with me? Because it was uncomfortable. And so
Mm.
they would come with me, and I'm like, okay, so we just get to sit here and visit. Like, I would look around the room like, oh, that needs dusting. Oh, this, and
Mm.
I'm like, no, no, just
Mm.
leave it be. And then if my brother needed help with something, he would ask me, and that would be great. But it freed me up to be able to go and spend, a week. In the meantime, my older daughter was having her third baby this last year. And so I was able to go down there and stay there for about 3 weeks,
Wow.
and not feel this burden of like, well, I can't do that because I got, it's like you're being torn in two. You have this
Mm.
family that's current, but you also have this past family. And where do your alliances line up? And so, you know, redefining what a daughter is super important. I think adult children take on these roles that sometimes aren't really necessary, especially in a dysfunctional family. And the guilt of releasing that is hard.
Good. good. I really appreciate explaining that. So our listeners will know this isn't a flip the switch. Oh, I'm a daughter now. Flip the
Yeah,
switch.
exactly.
This is work.
It's
This is
little bites.
yes. That's very good. And then when you were with your daughter, did you feel like it was one of those times where you could just really finally be present and just
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you can breathe. Like
breathe? You
I
could breathe.
knew that my brother was taking care of my dad. There's still those little twinges where you're
Sure.
like, should I be
We're
with it?
human.
I feel bad. Like it's been a couple weeks. And then, you have to ask yourself the question, but what more can you do? Like if you were there, would it be any different? No, I would go see him for a half hour and then I'd go home. So it's not like his world's not going to be rocked if I'm not there. And at this point of his life, it's like the day to day is always the same.
Yeah.
So I knew if something, took a turn for the worse or something happened, my brother would call me and let me know. So I was able to fully release and be in the presence of my core family, which I adore. And,
Yes.
holding those grandbabies, it's like,
Mm,
that's heaven right there.
right.
And it's just so good. And so I never want to leave them. And that's always a pain when I have to say goodbye.
Right.
Thank goodness for FaceTime now, because then now the
Yeah.
grandkid, my oldest is almost 6, and he's like, Fifi, I'm a Fifi. He's
Fifi.
like, Fifi, when are you coming back? And they're just, oh, it's so yummy.
Yeah.
But you're able to enjoy the present. And I think that's the most important thing, is not having this burden of the past narratives that you have given yourself, but being able to rip those off and create this new narrative of like, this is where my life is now and it's okay.
Yes. And it gives me such joy to hear you, Phyllis, saying all this, because I've read your book and I know what your life has looked like, and just to see what God has done in this next generation because of your obedience and, your release, your surrender. It gives me a lot of joy. So,
Aw.
yeah. Well, let's look at Moses here for a
Yeah.
minute. A dude who needed to learn some of these things. Exodus 14. I'm going to go ahead and read all the way through 27, and then Phyllis and I'll talk about it for a minute. When Moses, his father-in-law, saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people who come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. Now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God. And you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs and thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you. You will be able to endure, and all this people also will go in their place in peace." I love that right there. And go in peace. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. In any hard case they brought to Moses, but any smaller matter they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country. So what What really spoke to you? This every time we read, it's the living word. Every time we read it, like I read it this morning, and I read it now.
I know.
Something else jumps out.
Yeah. Well, like I was telling you earlier
Yeah.
off recording, is
Yeah.
when I was reading it this morning, when his father-in-law was saying, like, you're sitting here alone doing all the judging, like, what are you doing? And a lot of the verses were, I
Mm.
I need to do this. I have to teach them. I make a decision. And then something that struck out to me right now when you were reading this is his father-in-law said, you can't do it alone. Oh,
Yeah.
but don't we always try? And so when
Yes.
you read further down, it goes from I to they. They should judge the people at all times. Then they can
Mm.
bring you every minor case and judge it for themselves,
Mm.
or the bigger cases, other people. So it became an I thing into a they thing. So basically, like, we start off saying, I need to do this. I need to have the control. I have to tell everyone what to do because I'm the only one. Because God had come to him and said, you're the one. But I don't think God said, you're the one forever. You're the
Mm.
one that has to do this forever and ever. Amen. Like, that's not what he was saying. He was saying, you're in charge of pulling them out of Egypt. But even, like, I was reading this morning, like some chapters before, when the people were grumbling and complaining, I'm like, don't we all? And
Right.
he was like, they're like, we should have stayed where we were. We had food. Like, this is horrible. And God gave them the manna, right? So
Yeah.
God kept providing. He wasn't asking Moses to find all of this stuff. He wasn't saying, you go out and find the food. I'm not going to do that. He provided all the things. So he was telling Moses, like, I'm right here. Like, you can ask for help. Like, you can, I'll provide these
Mm.
things for you. But Moses took it upon himself of, like, well, if I brought the Israelites out of Egypt, then I have to be able to be responsible for all these people. And we do that in families, right? So everyone has their place. So it's like the I person, which was me, it was like, I
Mhm.
have to
Mhm.
take care of the whole family, because all the family members were kind of like grumbling and complaining and falling
Mm.
apart. And so I don't have that demeanor. I'm like, okay, I'm more even keeled,
Yes.
where I was like, hey, like, let's get it together. Like, let's do these things. Let me be in charge. And then I can show you, like, how to be this perfect little family. And the reality is that it takes all parts.
Yes.
It takes all parts, even if the parts aren't perfect, it takes all parts. And so you can't do it on your own. So it has to become a they thing. And also it has to become a him thing.
Mm.
So, God has to be in the mix of it to say, to be able to guide you. So I think that's the thing. What I loved is at the end, when Moses let his father-in-law go, and he returned to his own land. And that's like one of the things that struck out at me, because I was like, that's what he was telling me, is like, go back to your family that I have built for you. Go back.
Mm.
You don't need to, like, stay here and keep doing the same thing. Like, go back to what I just originally created for you and be with them. And that's what Moses did for his
Wow.
father-in-law. It was time for his father-in-law to go back to, his original family, his core family that he
Yes.
loved. And so I
Yes.
think when you're in a dysfunctional family, it's like, if you have been honored enough for him to create this family for you now that is beautiful, don't rip it apart by trying to, like, do the things of the past and be
Mm.
in control of, the family that you grew up in. But that doesn't mean that you have to be tied to them forever in a bad way, right? It has to be in a
Yes.
healthy way. You don't have to do it in a dysfunctional way. And I think that's where it gets twisted up, is people get locked into their origin family, but
Mm.
also God creates a new family for you. And if you don't honor that, the two get meshed in together, and then you can't break the generational chain,
Mm.
because you are enmeshed with the toxicity of the past thing. And so his father-in-law was really wise to say, you need to pull this stuff apart. You're not tied to these people forever.
Mm.
This was a journey you're taking them on. Yes, you are the one that was chosen, but also you need to delegate.
Yes. It's like God saying, I never meant for the entire burden of responsibility
Yeah,
to be upon you,
right.
upon Moses, upon Phyllis,
One
upon
person.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-mm,
It's not for one person.
mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. And where it just jumped out at me, the peace. Oh yeah. If you, in verse 23, if you do this, God will direct you. You will be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. We think if we do that, okay, we'll get peace and everybody else is going to fall apart.
Right. Right.
And it
Because we're
says
so
right there,
important.
no, they'll go in peace,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Not always initially. There's going to be a rub. I know when I first started learning, I've been on a healing journey for over 10 years now, and probably about 15 years. And initially, as I finally started learning about boundaries and how to say no and all these things, and it was like I was almost like proud of myself, but I didn't realize people on the other side are going, what the heck? There's never been a boundary there before. They don't go, oh, Cheryl, I'm so proud of you for putting up that boundary.
Oh
They
my
push
gosh.
and
Yeah.
they fight and they try to rip, and you're like, so we don't want to say to the people listening, to the women, or listening, that this is easy and that people are gonna,
Yeah.
but when we stand firm and do what God's calling us to do,
Right.
peace
Well,
will.
and it's so good that you said that about boundaries, because the one thing I think with boundaries that people don't realize is that you are pulling out of your natural state of where you fit in the family.
Mm,
So now all of a sudden you're putting like a property line there and saying, yeah, I'm not going to react the way I usually react. Or I'm not going to do the things that I usually do. And it disrupts
mm,
everything. And so people think boundaries are horrible because you're learning the word no. Boundaries are actually so healthy and loving because you're learning how to grow in your own stature of not having to rely on these crutches of where everyone fits in the family. And let's just, you go home and you're frustrated, right? Because you get in a fight with like a sibling or a parent or whatever, but you don't change the dynamics, because that's the thing that keeps the family stirring.
mm,
Everyone knows their place, even if
mm,
it's dysfunctional, everything. When you set a boundary and all of a sudden you're like, taking a right turn somewhere
mhm,
else, they're like, that's not how she usually reacts. Why is she doing that? You're going to disrupt everything,
mm, mm.
but the disruption is necessary in order to get healthy.
Yes, yes. And Phyllis's healing journey was Phyllis's healing journey. And whether others get on board with that or not, it's her healing journey before the Lord. And
Right.
the same with me, the same with those of you who are listening. And we pray that, Phyllis and I were talking before we went on air, her father's not doing well,
Mhm.
and her brother has stepped up again. But we pray that he will see what Phyllis's healing journey has done for her, how it has changed her life, how it has given her that peace, and that he's going to go, I want that,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the thing that you have to always remember is just trusting God in the path that he has for you, and then just praying that other family members feel that too. Is that always possible? No. I mean, sometimes they'll never get it, but there are times when you might shock yourself when you
Mm,
actually follow his path and you find that the conversation isn't as diversive as like what it
mm,
normally used to be.
mhm,
It's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, we kind of had a good conversation. Okay, because you're more calmer, you're more in control of your own feelings. You also release, any kind of control or hold over what you think should be. When I was telling Cheryl earlier, when I walk into the nursing home and I know I have to have a conversation with my brother, I ask God to like guard me with
mhm,
angels to just I always say the Lord of armies, just
Yes.
bring the Lord of armies around me to protect my heart, right?
Mm.
So that if any harsh words are said to me, they don't stick, right? They will disperse, or there won't be any. And this last time when I went in, the conversation was so sweet and nice, which is never the case.
Mm.
Never the case. And I really think, praying a situation before you walk into, especially a battlefield, when
Yes.
and knowing in my heart, I was like, okay, so if it starts getting like really ugly, I have the ability to shut it down and walk away. I
Mm.
have the ability to say, I'm not going to engage in this.
Yes.
I have the ability to say, not today.
Mm.
We have to stand in the face of those hard conversations. Also, we have to be brave enough to walk away from a situation when it becomes too volatile or too unsafe. I don't think that God is asking you to stay in an unsafe situation just because it's a relative. So I have this thing where I always, when I speak, I tell people the one thing that I just want this analogy banned forever is when people say blood is thicker than water. Like, it's your family, you have to stand by them, you have to, no matter what I have watched women struggle with family members that are so abusive, and now saying like, well, this happened with my parent, but like he wants to see the grandkids. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like that shouldn't even be it shouldn't even be a discussion.
Yeah.
But we have this battle of our Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
of fighting forgiveness with also holding somebody accountable.
Mm.
And so I think it's really important as Christians that we have to understand having forgiveness is about you. It is not about the other person. And also it's a protection of your heart.
Mm.
And I just think that we can't be naive to thinking that, well, if God is putting this forgiveness in my heart, then he'll put it in this other person's heart too. Not if they haven't done the work.
Yeah.
If they haven't done the work and haven't changed and they don't really care, you are walking in a battlefield in your own family.
Mm.
And so I'm passionate about that, because I see a lot of people doing the same things, and then they're wondering why in their own home life, things can't change.
Mm.
And I'm like, if you keep bringing the toxicity into your home, then your next generation will not change. So yeah, that's my 2 cents right there.
And I really appreciate it, because those are hard truths, and they're truths we have to look at. Phylis, are there any other thoughts you'd like to leave the woman listening with who's really struggling with this burden of responsibility and learning to accept help?
Yeah, I think getting help is really important. I don't think you can do this. And it's like it said in Moses, you cannot do this alone. You just can't. You have to be able to have a group of people that can help you along this journey. And that is something that I love doing as a story work trauma coach. I'm actually going back to Chicago in November, we're graduating, and it's such an exciting time. It's been a 3-year journey.
Wow.
And I will just say, like, one of the things that Carrie makes us do is we have to do the work on ourselves first, which I think is so beautiful, because she said, you cannot help someone else through their journey unless you have walked the same path. And I love walking women through that. So I'm a story work trauma coach. I call myself like an accountability coach. And then I also have a program called Patience and Grace that directly works with the mother-daughter wound. That is my heart. And I just really have this heart to show women it doesn't matter where you've come from. If you have this dysfunctional mother, narcissistic mom, alcoholic mom, like anything like that, there are steps that you can take to pull yourself away from that and learn some things that you may have learned wrong, and then be able to grow and have God show you how to be a more complete person, not a completely healed person, but a more complete, and learning how to just maneuver through this world as an unmothered. Because I will say, anyone that has grown up with a loving mom has no idea what it feels like to grow up without a mom. You just don't. And so I have a private Facebook community. If you answer 3 questions in there, we have a group of almost 70 women in there now. It's been amazing. And we're starting to have conversations in there. We're sharing books with each other. It's a loving, safe place. And so that's my biggest thing is I want women to feel safe and I want them to feel strong. And so as you walk through this journey, you're going to feel safe walking through this course and then come out in a stronger way of just more confident and free and not letting these things bother you that bothered you in the past. So that's all that stuff you can find on my website at phylismantelli.com. And yeah, it's just my love and my journey to just bring these women to a different place and know that just because you started out on a wrong foot of we got the tail end of what a mom's supposed to be. And I don't know why. I have no answer for that, but I know that God takes your mess and he makes it a message. And so he chose us and he was like, I want you to go out and be a mouthpiece to show that now I'm a grandma of 3 so far because my youngest is getting married next year. So I know more babies are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship I have with my daughters now is honest and pure. It's hard. One thing I always tell people is my oldest daughter said to us one time, I don't want to be the family that just talks about the weather. I want to be the family that's going to dig into hard conversations. And I was like, bring it. We're ready. Let's do this. And so if there's something wacky going on, we bring it to the surface.
Wow.
And it hurts sometimes, but I'll tell you what, our love is big in our family.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. So I will also leave those ways to find Phylis in the show notes, her website and her social media links so that people can connect with you and learn more, and women listening who need that help. And lastly, just tell us the name of your book one more time that you've written and the one you're working on.
Yeah. So the one that's out now is Unmothered, Life with a Mom Who Couldn't Love Me. And then now I'm doing the companion book to it, which will be the study guide. And I think it's going to be called Unmothered No More, but we'll see. It's still in the works. We're in editing process right now. So yeah, it's coming out.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks so much, Phylis. And thanks to those of you who joined us to listen in. Thank you for joining us for the Secure in God's Embrace podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. And remember, you are securely held by your Heavenly Father. Take some time to rest in His embrace. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.